Analytical methods or research methods, especially for empirical papers. How are they doing the research? So this is mainly for empirical papers. It could be quantitative, where there is a lot of numerical data, and this is usually within the scientific method. So the researcher has a specific research hypothesis. My research hypothesis is this. I think A causes B, or I think A is connected to B. So the researchers use the scientific method. They have probably, usually, not always, but usually two groups that they are comparing. They collect data, numerical data, they do statistical analysis, and the results show that this hypothesis is correct or it doesn't work. That's quantitative research, and that's common in science, but also in most areas of psychology, some areas of linguistic research, sociology, many areas of sociology research too. Quantitative research. It could be qualitative research, where there's more of a holistic analysis. It's mainly observational data and more open-ended questions. So instead of a specific research hypothesis, you might have a more open-ended research question. Instead of a hypothesis like X causes Y, like this teaching method will lead to better learning of this grammar point, it's more open-ended. Like, for example, what are the different struggles that students have in this particular educational setting, or in this particular kind of learning? It's more open-ended. You don't have a specific hypothesis about what's going on. In fact, often it might be more kind of exploratory. What's going on here? Let's look at different situations. So you're not comparing groups, you're not collecting numerical data, you're not doing experiments, you're maybe doing observations. Think of an anthropologist observing a tribe, a new tribe. The anthropologist is writing detailed observations of what people are doing, maybe doing detailed interviews with people. Okay, tell me about the history of your people. What do you believe? Why do you believe these things? So things like case studies, interviews, observational studies, descriptive kinds of studies, like observing a classroom and observing what's going on, how students interact with each other and how they're learning. Maybe using a particular theory that you follow to interpret the data. So based on a theory, as well as your own intuitions, you come up with some kind of a conclusion that I think, this is going on. This is why people in this tribe believe in this, or why they do this kind of practice, or this is why students have trouble in this kind of school setting. So this leads to, again, particular research methods. Theoretical research, think of like a lot of literature research, philosophy research, maybe theoretical. The data might be some piece of literature, or might be theoretical arguments and theoretical scenarios. And the arguments are mainly theoretical, logical proofs, logical arguments. It might be more qualitative, so qualitative, like observational data, open-ended interview data, descriptive data, things like that. It might be quantitative research, where the research in the study is experimental with statistical analysis, and that's quantitative. Or it might be more critical, interpretive kind of research. The structure of papers. Let's think about the structure. Here's a structure that is a very rigid, formal structure that is followed by a lot of scientific papers, and also papers in many areas of social science, like psychology, sociology. If it's quantitative research, for example, in psychology, sociology, quantitative linguistics research. Humanities papers probably won't have this kind of structure. They will have some of these elements, though, even if they don't call them, even if they don't use these terms. Humanities papers, like literature, will have some of these features. So a lot of published academic papers have an abstract at the beginning. So an abstract it's before the actual paper, before the introduction, and it's like a summary. It's a summary of the whole article, and it summarizes the research question or research hypothesis or the purpose of the article. maybe a little bit about the background and how the author, maybe a little bit about the tiny bit, very extremely short summary of the research method involved, and the findings and results, the implications. So it's like a summary, a very short summary of the whole article and why it's important, why should you care, kind of thing. It's an abstract. And these are important because, I mean, not all, but almost all research journals will have an abstract before each article. And they're important because also if they are indexed in like Google Scholar indexing databases, library databases, when you search for articles, the first thing you see is the title and the abstract. It's a summary, and it's important because you read the abstract and decide, do I want to download this article or not? Do I want to read the whole article or move on? So abstracts are important for that. You have the introduction, which sets up the specific topic, the research question, why they're doing it. And with academic papers, the introduction might be several paragraphs long. You're maybe used to writing papers yourself that have a one-paragraph introduction. When you get into academic papers, academic research papers, the introduction might be 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, maybe a bit more, because they're dealing with more complex topics and need more setup. A little bit of background, introduction, very specific background on the topic. Speaking of background, then the next section after the introduction is often more background. And it's often called the literature review. By literature here, when we say literature review, we mean published academic research articles and other research materials on the topic. By literature, we mean research literature, published literature on the topic by other scholars, monographs, research articles, and other stuff. And the purpose of this is to examine what research has been done on this specific question and what needs to be addressed. So maybe the writer is going to look at published research on this very specific topic and show that there's a question or problem that hasn't been addressed yet in the research on this very, very specific topic, or if there has been research, it wasn't good enough, or there's some problems, so I'm going to do a better job. So the literature review often sets up the rationale for the whole paper, for the whole research article and the research that's done. Now, more theoretical papers and even qualitative papers might not have a literature review, but there will be elements of this in the paper anyway. If it's more of a literature analysis article, somewhere in the introductory sections or some section, they will probably talk about what other scholars have said about this topic, this specific topic. So there may not be a literature review section in many humanities papers, but there are often elements of that in the paper somewhere. It's just not a separate section. Data analysis. If it's an empirical paper, there will be a data and data analysis section. If it's qualitative data like observational studies, case studies, it may overlap and be kind of intermingled with the discussion section too. It may not be distinct, and it may just be describing, okay, here's the data that I've got. And the writer presents some data and then analyzes it, presents more and analyzes it. And you might see this in qualitative research or in maybe theoretical research on literature or grammar, theoretical linguistics. So the analysis and discussion may be intermingled somewhat. So within a quantitative paper, there is a very distinct, detailed data analysis section. It might be called analysis or experiment or something like that. It's very detailed explanation of the experiment, how it was done, how it was set up and all that, and the results, and the statistical analysis in great detail. Then there's often a discussion or general discussion section where the writer summarizes the results of the data analysis and explains what it means. It has proven my research hypothesis, or it says this about my research question. The writer also then compares that with past research and in order to maybe show how my results are different or better, or why did my results make sense in comparison with other research or or theories in the field or things like that. So this is kind of a key part of the paper. It's maybe one of the first parts you might want to read, or the most important part that you would want to read in the paper. Then the conclusion, which is kind of a summary and wrap up, and maybe a restatement of why this is important, why should you care, what did I find, what did I show in the paper. That's the conclusion. A quick note about finding papers. If you are trying to find good academic papers, if you do a general Google search, you might get a lot of trash, a lot of irrelevant results, a lot of stuff that's not academic. So go to Google Scholar, scholar.google.com, and Google Scholar limits the search to academic websites, websites of academic publishers, university websites, websites of research institutes and government agencies and things like that. So you're more likely to find good stuff at Google Scholar. And less often today, people use library databases. These are kind of databases of academic research articles that are provided by companies like ERIC and Ovid and others to libraries. Well, if you're searching your university library and if you're searching for articles, maybe your library webpage has a search engine for academic articles, it may actually be using results from a commercial database like ERIC or Ovid or something like that. If you're in a country that uses a different language other than English, or especially if it's a non-Western language that Google and Google Scholar don't index as well, you might have a domestic search engine for academic sites. So for example, in Korea, this is where I'm working and teaching, ris.co.kr is a good academic search engine for academic papers, and it breaks things down according to like academic research papers and books, dissertations, and other things, and you can just ignore some of those and just focus on the articles and create the Sononmun that it serves you. That's a good website. Or more specifically for just research articles that are published in Korea by Korean academic journals, KCI at kci.go.kr. The KCI index is a very good one too, and it will search for things that are published in Korea by Korean research journals like this, whether they are written in Korean or maybe English or occasionally another language. So that's it for now. That's basically what academic articles are and how you can start to understand them. And in the next video, I'm going to go more in detail about how to understand them, how to read them, and good strategies for reading them if you find it difficult. So that's it for now. I will see you soon in the next video. Goodbye.